Good evening, afternoon, and a warm welcome to you all from Pakhuis de Zwijger. A warm welcome to everybody here because it's allowed again to have people in the audience again. So a warm welcome to you, and please give a hand of applause so people actually know you're here. And of course, a warm welcome to you at home as well. Today we're going to be witnessing the book launch of Future Cities. It's here in front of me, and I'm very proud that we can be here together to have a celebration as well, and to talk about the book. Because in this book, the journalist Stephanie Bakker and photographer Yvonne Brandwijk traveled to 5 different cities around the world, and that is Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, Lima in Peru, Yangon in Myanmar, Medellin in Colombia, and Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The book and the accompanying web documentary highlights the strengths of these large upcoming cities by shedding light on their inhabitants, but also important themes like innovation, identity, and hope are being discussed in the book. I just had a brief glance because it's the launch, so I didn't have time to read it beforehand, but I have just had a brief glance, and it's an amazing book, I can say. We will talk this afternoon to the author, of course, but also to some experts and to the protagonists of the book. And we will try to find answer to the question, how can growing cities hold on to their unique strengths and identities while also including every person in these cities? And I can imagine that we could take a leave at that book because Amsterdam is changing rapidly as well. So I'm very interested to see what the parallels are between the cities that are being mentioned and Amsterdam, of course. If you are interested in discussing with us in this program, that is possible. If you have access to a device, you can go to www.menti.com, and there you will be asked for a code, and that code will be 88653635. I will repeat, 88653635. It's also visible on screen. If you pose your questions there, and if you tell me who the question is directed to, I will make sure that the right question is aimed at the right person. Right, I would say let's get to work. We've got 2 guests at the table, and of course I would like to start with you. Stephanie Bakker, you're the initiator, the writer, and the big brain behind the book. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
Can you briefly tell us what we can expect from this book?
Briefly, I've been working for almost 7 years on this project, so briefly will be a little bit difficult. But I can imagine.
We've got 1.5 hours to really dive into it. But if you had to do an elevator pitch, so when somebody said, "Well, I heard you write a book. What's it about?" And I've got 5 seconds.
Okay. This book is about 5 emerging cities around the world: Kinshasa, Addis Ababa, Yangon, Lima, and Medellin. Mm-hmm. And we've been traveling, I've been traveling to these cities together with photographer Yvonne Brandwijk to all these cities. And what we did is we portrayed them through the means of the strength of the city, instead of focusing on the negative consequences of urbanization. Yeah. And that is what makes it, I think that gives a different perspective on emerging cities.
And you started a while ago, and what was interesting is that when you started the book, and we did a program here as well, is that a city, for example, like Medellin, that was undiscovered territory for a lot of people, and that changed rapidly in the past years. How did your perception about, for example, Medellin change when you first visited it and now?
Medellin is a little bit of a difficult example because I've been traveling to Colombia for 20 years already. For example, Kinshasa, that was the first city we went to in 2014. And all we knew about Kinshasa was about rebels and war. And that was the only idea we had. And then we heard someone saying, well, Kinshasa is the future Paris of Africa. And by the way, it is growing very fast economically, and the number of people is also growing very fast, because it is predicted that Kinshasa will have 83 million inhabitants in the year 2000, within 80 years. Yeah.
And so am I correct in saying that you would like to go beyond the stereotypes that we know of the city and dive deep into the people based on several themes?
That's correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will return to you later and would like to introduce our next guest, of course. Joining me here is Rachel Keaton. You're a researcher and you're an urbanist. And why do you do what in life?
Why do I do what in life?
Yeah, so professionally, let's start that.
Okay.
Because I'd like to know why we are on this earth, and especially from your mouth.
All right. Let's start with the small questions. That's good. Well, I trained as an architect, so my first love was buildings, and particularly housing. And I think also because I strongly felt that housing is a human right, and to me, being an architect was a way to further that ambition that everyone would have access to housing. I think in the trajectory of my career, architecture became a bit too small. Cities are much more interesting, much more exciting. So that's kind of how I made the jump to urbanism. And my expertise is really in contemporary urbanization processes in Africa. So I'm not, unfortunately, familiar with all the wonderful cities in this book, but the African continent.
Right. And you're connected to the University of Twente?
That's right.
And what can we learn? What can we take away from cities in Africa? Because I can imagine that it's literally a world away. But is there anything that we can learn? Because we're a rapid growing city as well in Amsterdam, and that goes for many cities in the Netherlands. What can we take away?
I think we can learn more than we could discuss in an hour and a half, to be honest. There's so much to learn, and I think the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
The most important thing, because to mention something.
The most important thing. I would say, I think what's very important to keep in mind is something that Jennifer Robinson has written about, and she calls African cities ordinary cities. As in, we don't need to do this othering of the Western cities or developing cities or emerging cities. We can just look at ordinary cities because people are the same everywhere.
Right. We will mention later because there are loads of questions that pop up right now. But let's keep it at this to this for now. Stephanie, you have invited people to share their stories here as well, and they will be joining us online. Can you tell us what we can expect and who we can expect in view?
Yeah, I invited a protagonist from all 5 cities.
Yeah.
And these are protagonists that have been traveling with us before. Also, we went together to Quito, to the City Summit of the United Nations, and some of them have been here in Amsterdam to join the We Make the City Festival.
Right. Well, why do you call them people that are featured in the book protagonists?
Yeah, because it's their stories the project is about. So we are the narrators. But they are their stories, their cities.
Yeah. You've invited everybody, and not everybody is here, and for different reasons, right?
It was quite an adventure. Some of them have problems with the internet connection. I was trying to connect with Elsa from Lima. She's not here, and still trying to get connection. So I was watching on the screen if she already enters. Now I know that she moved to another place to try a better connection.
If she's here, we will be putting her on screen as well.
For now, I see on the screen, I see Hadis from Addis Ababa. Welcome, and so nice to have you here. Hadis is a Masinko player from Addis Ababa. I see Carlos from Medellin. So nice to have you here as well. Carlos is a digital entrepreneur. And we have also here Melaku, also from Addis Ababa. And I saw Lewison, the designer from Kinshasa, for a while, but he left. I think also problems with the internet connection. So maybe he will come back.
Lewison has left the building.
Lewison has left the building, yeah.
Right.
Of course, I tried to invite someone from Medellin, from Yangon. But as you maybe know, there has been a coup in Myanmar last year. And it's hardly impossible to communicate with the people over there because internet is often inaccessible. And it is also quite dangerous for people to communicate with Western media. So as a friend, I'm in contact with Aung Suu Min, one of the protagonists over there, who had also been here in the Netherlands. But it's as a friend and not as a journalist. So I was not able to invite him over here, but I can tell that he's safe and he is thrilled with the book.
Good to hear that, and very difficult to hear that it's not possible to just talk to him. Somebody who we are missing as well is Yvonne Brandwijk, your partner in crime. Tell us why she's not here.
Yeah, I created the Future City project together with Yvonne. We did everything together, and I'm sure that she didn't want to miss this final phase of the project we've been working on for 5 years together. We've been here on this stage for a couple of times, and it is really strange to be here. I'm not alone because I'm surrounded by you and I'm surrounded by all the people from the cities. But yeah, she's the most important person missed today. So to honor our special collaboration and to honor our work, I made a short making-of video I want to share with you.
Right, let's have a look at that.
Ons avontuur begon in 2014. We reisden naar Kinshasa, een stad die we kenden van verhalen over oorlog en armoede. Maar eenmaal ter plaatse bleek er ook een ander verhaal te vertellen. Een verhaal over hoop, sapeurs die flaneren door de sloppenwijken en jonge mensen die vanuit het hele land naar deze stad komen om hier te studeren aan de modeacademie. Ook in de andere steden draaiden we de camera 180 graden. Steeds waren we benieuwd. Wat zie je als je verder kijkt dan het vooroordeel? De zoektocht naar de kracht van de stad leidde ons naar de kunstscene van Yangon, naar start-ups in Medellin, een sociale kookschool in Lima en dansers en muzikanten in Addis Ababa die door vast te houden aan hun tradities zorgen voor verbinding en vernieuwing. Future Cities groeide uit tot iets veel groters dan een serie verhalen voor de krant. We gaven lezingen, wonnen prijzen en organiseerden exposities. Zoveel mogelijk samen met de hoofdpersonen, want het zijn hun verhalen waar het project om draait. Zij leerden ons dat dromen kunnen leiden tot verandering en dat pioniers uit de hele wereld elkaar begrijpen, ook al spreken ze niet dezelfde taal. Als grande finale is er nu een boek. Een ode aan deze steden, de mooie mensen die we er ontmoeten en aan mijn dierbare vriendin Yvonne. Als wij samen op pad waren, gebeurde er iets. Op een religieus festival in Addis Ababa, met punkers in Yangon, sapeurs in Kinshasa, ja zelfs met de techneuten in Medellin. Magic. Met onze voeten in de modder, het hoofd in de wolken, midden in het echte leven. Mensen die niet wilden praten, vertelden hun hele levensverhaal. En 1 foto werd een complete reportage. Future Cities leerde mij anders kijken. Naar oplossingen en kleine verhalen die iets groots in beweging kunnen zetten. Er valt nog een hoop te verbeteren in de stad, maar dat kan alleen als je begrijpt wat mensen drijft en wat ze bindt.
Yeah, it's beautiful and very unfortunate that Yvonne's not here. It's good to mention because I met her as well when we did when I interviewed you about the book and Future Cities, and it was very, very touching to see the chemical, the magic that you had, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it was always when I didn't have an answer on the. We always shared a microphone.
Yeah.
We never had our own microphone, so we always shared it. And when I didn't have the answer, she took the microphone and the other way around. So, yeah, that's strange to not have it today. But yeah.
I can imagine that. Well, in that case, the book is still here, so I'm very happy with that. Can you tell us a little bit about the book? What's the structure of the book?
The structure of the book, we made 2 editorial choices that are different from what we did before. The first editorial choice was an idea of Eleanor, the publisher, and she said, well, until now you presented the 5 cities as a separate story. Why do you not mix them? Why do you not mix them? I said, well, I have a brain, something is stopping inside. How do you mean mix everything? And then I thought, well, it might be a very good idea to mix it, because what we're trying to do with this project is to give our audience a different perspective on emerging cities, because most of these 5 cities people do not know or have different perceptions on, and most of the time it are biased perceptions or negative perceptions. And so we literally invite our readers to roam freely through the streets of these future cities, meet people they don't know, and get stuck in situations that are surprising. And that's exactly how we did it when we traveled. So, and by mixing all the cities and the images, you get more or less one portrait of an emerging city. And
then you can see the parallels between those cities as well.
Yeah.
You didn't only mix the cities visually, but you also decided to use themes within the book.
Yeah.
What themes are they, and why did you choose for them?
Yeah, there are seven themes in the book, and they are quite general themes, from hope and ambition to inclusion to modernization, innovation. And you can say that these themes apply for all 5 future cities, but actually they apply for all cities in the world. Because people have been moving to cities for centuries in the hope to find work or better living conditions or to find safety. And that's also the case for these cities. But what we're doing differently is that this book is about what does hope look like in Kinshasa, because we normally don't think about these cities in relation to that theme. And what does innovation for a city as Medellin mean? And what do people, or what do kids in Lima dream of? So that's the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
When you started the project, it was the idea to turn the camera around 180 and to see more than you initially would see. This journey you went on with Yvonne, how did it change yourself?
Yeah, it gave me a total different perspective on the world as well, because I think everyone has its ideas about emerging cities, emerging countries, and they are based on what you read in the media and you mostly read or see the negative consequences of urbanization. So pollution, inequality. And what we're trying to do is turn the camera 180 degrees around and see what are the stories behind the statistics of urbanization and growth, and what are the stories that you see beyond, when you go beyond your prejudice.
But what I think is really interesting, if you turn the camera 180 around, if you're behind the camera and you turn it 180 around, you're in the picture. So because you told us that you've been traveling to Medellin for 20 years, so you know the city as well. But I can imagine, while working on this book, it brought another perspective.
Yeah.
What didn't you know about Medellin, for example, that you didn't know when you visited 20 years ago?
When I visited 20 years ago, Medellin was not a safe city, and I think Carlos can agree with that. He was very little at that time, I think, because Carlos is quite young. But what I didn't know, when I went there with Yvonne in 2016, was that there was so much innovation. And that there were so many tech entrepreneurs, and that there's a lot of social innovation, actually. Yeah. Because I read an article before we left, and that was saying that Medellin was the new Silicon Valley of Latin America. Yeah. I thought, we're going to meet a lot of tech people, and they are doing tech things.
Yeah.
But that was not the case. It was the case that they were inventing innovations to transform the city.
Yeah.
And to include people.
And then what I think that was interesting from the program that we did together, that it was almost on an individual basis. So if you think about Silicon Valley, it's about the Googles and it's about, the Facebooks. It wasn't like that. It was on an individual level almost, where they tried to do good through tech. And is that still happening, or has that changed rapidly as well?
I think we should ask Carlos.
No, well, Carlos, if you're there, let's see.
He's in Medellin right now, I think.
Yeah, because, Carlos, it's nice to have you here. You were based in Medellin, but I understood that you moved to Miami. Am I correct?
Yeah. I recently moved to Miami.
Why? Why did you leave Medellin?
Well, I just moved to Miami, actually. Well, by the way, nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me here.
Likewise.
Yeah. First, I moved to actually Silicon Valley, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. Especially because I was looking to improve my skills in technology and becoming a better entrepreneur. So I moved to the Valley, but I never actually left Medellin, in a sense. I spent, I would say, half of my time in Medellin. I traveled all the time.
And is it still like we said here at the table? Is it still the case that it's very innovative and it's almost on an individual level, or did the big tech companies put their claws into Medellin as well?
Yes, that's what I was also trying to do there. Spreading the word. Telling people what we were doing over here, the quality of engineers and talent that we have in general. Several companies already moved here. Amazon, Google, all of them have offices in Colombia.
Right. And what do you think of that development?
I think that is great. I mean, these people is being paid in dollars, which is 4-1, the difference right now. So we are kind of, that people is spending in the economy. Other areas of the economy are just lifting up. So in a way, I would say that is a really good impact. And also the mindset, I would say that is the most important thing. The mindset of the culture is changing because of all these different examples. So that's great to see.
Great. We will talk to you and the other guests later as well. But thank you so much for shedding that light onto this topic for now. Last question before I go to Rachel for you, Stephanie, is the cities that you selected. It seems quite random. Was it, or was there a thought behind it?
The images?
No, the cities.
Oh, the cities, yeah. Well, when we took a report of McKinsey as a starting point for our research, and there was a report on I think it was called Global Cities of the Future, something like that. And there were a lot of cities we didn't expect to be global cities of the future. So we thought, well, Kinshasa, one of the global cities of the future, Lima, we have a different perspective on these cities. And but it was basically our own fascination that led to the choice of these cities. Because someone, like I already told you, was saying, well, Kinshasa is going to be the next Paris of Africa. And so we linked all the cities to a surprising theme, something they excel in, and that was the starting point. So that was... Yeah.
That's why the reason that you chose them. We will come back to you, Rachel. Good to have you here. Like you said, you are a researcher. If we talk about Kinshasa, is it your impression as well that it will be the Paris of the future? And what does that mean, actually?
What does that mean is maybe a good place to start. I think it doesn't have to be the Paris of the future. It can be Kinshasa. I mean, every city has its own DNA and identity, which is a topic that is also elaborated in the book. And I think it comes through so clearly in the narrative that you write, and the story of Louison, who I hope will come back at some point. But I think it doesn't have to be Paris. It can be Kinshasa.
And if you can tell us about the growth of Kinshasa, how does that work, and what are the developments that you see?
it's interesting because a lot of the growth of cities in Africa that we talk about, the mega cities, right, the tens of millions, a lot of these places are actually not. It's not growing only because of migration. Because I think the rural to urban migration story is something we've all heard. We're all familiar with this. But it's actually mostly due to repopulation. So there are, if we speak very generally, high fertility rates, which means people have more children in many of these cities. So it's not just about people moving to the city, it's also about families.
And how does that impact the city? Because what you often hear, and what you hear in Amsterdam as well, is that cities are not always the best environment for children to grow up. How do cities like Kinshasa deal with that?
I think it's very difficult to talk about cities because the scale is so kind of intangible to us as humans. I think the way people use cities, most people could draw you a mental map, right? Even are you an Amsterdammer?
Yeah.
So you have your places that you go to eat, your cafes, and the places where you go out at night, places where you meet your friends, maybe a favorite bookshop. And everybody has that, right? So everybody's kind of mental map of a city can be very different. So I think this is really tricky to talk about the character of a city because individually it's also so diverse.
But it's also about the opportunities that an urban environment gives to to children, specifically. So is an urban place like Kinshasa, is that an interesting or a nice place to grow up to as a child? Is there enough parks or playgrounds or schooling? Is that all up to par for a child to grow up?
I don't think anywhere in the world has enough good schools and good parks. I think it's something that can be improved everywhere. I do think that cities in general offer maybe access to better healthcare and maybe more education opportunities and higher education opportunities. But something that was interesting that we also saw with the pandemic is a lot of people returning to rural areas because that's where you have your family and your social network. And at a certain point, that's the priority. That's what becomes more important. So yes, I think cities, and certainly African cities, offer a lot of advantages to people, but it, of course, can also be a very difficult...
But that's saying exactly nothing. It's good and it's bad.
But on the other hand, in Kinshasa, a lot of newcomers end up in the slums. I think 400,000 people every week move to Kinshasa. It's an enormous amount of people. And there's no housing for them, so they end up in slums. And
how do you find the hope? Because you were looking for hope within an area that is, well, where the disadvantages are that big. Do the people that come into the slums, move into the slums, the lack of opportunities, where do they find hope?
I think because Lewison, for example, in the book, you also see where he lives. And it is not really I do not really like the word slum, but it's not a rich area. He lives without electricity, without water, but actually he's a very famous fashion designer. And he attended, I think at the time that we met him already, 70 fashion shows around the world. So that's where his hope comes from. And he's still hoping that Kinshasa will have more shopping centers, will have fabrics to make clothes in series, and they have a very famous fashion academy. People from all over that part of Africa are coming to this fashion academy to study. So that's where the hope comes from.
There are opportunities, and that's very good to hear. You were looking for the DNA of certain cities. If we take Kinshasa, for example, what's the DNA? How would you describe that DNA?
The Congolese people are, and I really didn't know that they are so stylish, so creative. A lot of them, they don't have anything, but they invent their own styles. They
because the sappers that you mentioned are from Congo as well, a group of men that are really reinvented dandyism almost. And is that a form of empowerment as well?
I think that's empowerment. It brings also hope, and it's also a facade to hide from the poverty. And it is a way of showing off. And what brought me a hope is that traditional sappers are wearing Western brands.
That gave you hope?
No.
Oh.
No, they are showing off with it. But a new movement of sappers make their own fashion. And they make it from sustainable materials from Congo. And they call it eco-sap. So, and that is really nice because they told us, well, why should I promote Western brands? I make my fashion myself, and I'm very happy to do that.
And is that an example of a social change that you discover there?
No, not really of social change because they still don't have anything. They told us, well, the priest wears our clothes, but that doesn't bring money in the pocket, to say. But
did you witness social change within Kinshasa or one of the other cities that you went to?
Yeah, Medellin.
In what way?
Yeah, Medellin, but also Lima.
How did the two cities? What examples have you got from those two cities?
Medellin, for example, was I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, looking to Carlos, was very unsafe. In 1993, Pablo Escobar died, and after this, it became more and more violent at first. And then you should read the book to have the whole story, but the local authorities invested in the poor areas up on the hills, and they built there the most beautiful architecture, the parque bibliotecas, they call it, the public libraries, the best schools, the best mobilities, the cable cars to bring people to the city center. So yeah, that really made a change.
And did they install escalators as well at a certain point?
They installed escalators and
in the open air. So people would be more mobile, and that brought people. The mobility of people increased, and that influenced that.
And that brought back the state into the poor areas. That was people could go down for the opportunities, so they had infrastructure and access to opportunity, and on the other hand, the state was back in the poor areas where they didn't, they couldn't come for years.
Right. And what did you witness in Lima?
I think in Lima, because there is what they call a gastronomy boom, 15 years ago, people went to Peru to visit Machu Picchu, and now they prefer to go to the cities, to Lima's restaurants, for example. And there are even people flying in for just a weekend to eat in Lima. So, and that brings also social change, because Elsa, and this is the school she was in when we met her, a social cooking school, because Elsa lives in a very vulnerable area, and but she, that gave her a lot of opportunities, and now she's working in one of the best restaurants in the city.
Yeah, that's very interesting that changes as well. It's very interesting in these days and times as well that people just fly in for a weekend to eat. I don't know whether that's fitting in the worldview that we have at the moment, but it brings about social change.
And opportunities for a lot of people,
But if we talk about perspective, and if we move that to privilege, it is interesting that you and Yvonne, as two white ladies, went to these cities in order to research it. Did you feel that sense of privilege as well?
In the beginning, we started this project in 2014, and I think it became a theme the last couple of years. So when we started, it was not really top of mind, but that changed along the way.
How did it change, and how did you notice that?
It changed in the discussions we had with people here. And
People
not,
here, yeah.
and not there,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
The thing is that of course I was aware that what you were saying, you were very right when you said, is Kinshasa the next Paris of Africa? Kinshasa is Kinshasa.
Kinshasa, yeah.
And when we launched our first story about Kinshasa being the Paris of Africa, nobody mentioned this. But I think within 2 or 3 years after that, the discussions came up. How can you say Paris of Africa or the Silicon Valley of Latin America? It is Kinshasa. It is Medellin. It is,
If we talk about the discourse, discussion that we have about a privileged position, perspective as well. One of the first times it was mentioned is that how did Columbus discover America? It was already there, but that discourse has continued now as well. So, how do you interpret? How do you look at that development that they Stephanie and Yvonne had?
I think what Stephanie and Yvonne have done so beautifully in this book is that they put themselves into it. So you hear their voice, or I think you wrote the book, I think, so you hear your voice, but you hear the experience that you both had, and it's very clearly filtered through your person. And you talk about, well, here I expected something, and I found something entirely different. And it's this level of honesty. I think you admit to whatever bias or privilege that you have, and by doing that, you can have an honest conversation about it. And I think I don't think that we should say, well, this person isn't allowed to discuss this place because they're not from there. I think then we get a really, really wacky situation. But yeah.
But being aware of it is important.
Absolutely.
And being aware of
acknowledging
your perspective. And what you try to do is involve, like you said, the protagonists as well. Maybe it's good to involve Carlos here in the conversation again, because again, by traveling from Medellin to the United States, Carlos, did your perception of those cities change as well? Or looking back at Medellin, did your perception of Medellin change as well?
Yeah, definitely. As Stephanie mentioned before, like I had a perception, like I never left the country. My first trip was to the United States. The perception that we had there is like we were like really poor people, right? I was thinking that the rest of the world was like, I don't know, like 100 years ahead or something like that. But then when you go out and I have been able, fortunately, to travel many places around the world. When you go out, you start seeing that we are not doing that bad. We were doing bad. That was the case. But that was especially because of the violence. But even at that time, the infrastructure of Medellin was good. So I think that the pillar of the economy in Medellin has always been around the infrastructure projects, like the social mobility, which is the number one priority of the government. The inclusion of those different areas with the like, let's say, rich zones, like where the rest of the people is. So when you are here, one of the things that I noticed, which is really interesting, is like even if you are in the north, which is like what is considered like the poor zones, and you are from the south, you see people, gathering together, doing a lot of plans, coming together to build new companies and new, entrepreneurial journeys, because they all go to the center, to the different actors, which helps those people, like the universities and other entities. So you create that dynamic where the people who are like in poor areas can also be, can be participating in the social construction of the ecosystem. But another important thing is like when they start getting, gaining more money or like increasing their salaries, they don't necessarily leave the area, right? Which is an interesting fact. They don't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to move to the south. What you see is like they start building there. They start building new projects, new things, new businesses, or whatever. So the progress there is also created by the community, which is what we have been also doing right now, which is like building a new project to help all these different small projects in the different areas to kind of, think a little bit more global, to kind of grow together. So that's part of the process.
I think that's very interesting. And if you look from the perspective of growing cities, communities are important. And if I understand you correct, Carlos, you have to involve the communities in the development of the cities. And to empower, am I correct in saying that you have to empower the communities to help them think global in order to have new chances as well?
Yes, the way as we call it is actually we are developing leaders. So in all the different tech ecosystem here, what we told those people is like you're going to be the leader of your area, of your community. As a leader, you have to think in creative ways to make this, to change things. They have to feel that they're kind of let's say like invisible government, which is helping the development of the community of that specific area in behind the scenes, not necessarily like recognized by the government, but like doing things, the hard work as we call it here. Like one thing is to have the like the money and the support or like the branding of the government, but the other part is like actually doing the work. So they have to take two jobs. So one of the things that I was telling about the mentality of the mindset is like, yes, you have to work in this tech company. I don't know, for Apple. I have friends working in Apple here, in Apple, in Google, whatever. They just work from here remote because today the world is remote, and that's amazing. So they are working for many companies in the US, but they still have a responsibility, which is another important factor in the community, is we are putting in the mindset of them that they have the responsibility to grow the community.
But how do you do that? How do you grow your community if you work remotely from Apple? You can be in your own home doing the job. But how does that translate into responsibility for the community?
Yes. So there are different initiatives that we do there. So part of that starts with creating the actual community. So you have to create like, okay, so this is an organization. We're gonna have like some roles here. So you're going to recruit your people, the people who is around, the people who is participating in the development of this specific area. We're going to include also like the people who is doing businesses there, right? Especially as I told you, Medellin is really, the focus on mobility is really important here. So we do everything around mobility. Most of the projects are around that. So these people start creating the communities involving the different personas like businesses and other actors, and then they start building projects. Those projects are the projects that we gave them feedback, right? Like, okay, you're doing this good, this initiative, you should go to talk with these other people, go to talk with these other guys, or mixed communities between the areas. Like, for example, one of my, and that's not necessarily related to technology. I just want to clarify that. I have, for example, a friend, she is from Castilla, it was like one of the worst areas here in the era of Pablo Escobar. She is now leading a project of models in that area. And she is right now the model of big brands in the world, not necessarily and she's still living there, right? Yeah. So
And
that's
so
part of
she
what I-
does
what I
take
refer-
responsibility in that sense. Great. Well, thank you so much for now, Carlos. In a moment, we will talk to Hadis and Melaku, who are in Addis Ababa. But first, I would like to ask Stephanie. Lima, you connected that to the theme New Chances. What's the connection between New Chances and Lima?
Yeah, I already mentioned that the gastronomy boom. Future Cities is about the strength of the city. And in a lot of cities, the strength of the city was a little bit underground.
Yeah.
We had to look for it because it was quite new. It was underground. And in Lima, it was very visible that the gastronomy boom, that a lot of people were benefiting from it. So 5.5 million people benefit from the gastronomy boom. That's 20% of the total working population. So that is really a lot of people. And it's not only about entrepreneurs or rich kids who can afford the prestigious cooking courses. It is also about Elsa, who lives in a vulnerable area, goes to social cooking school, and is now working in one of the best restaurants of the city.
Right.
And it is also about another protagonist we had is he started working as a cleaner from the windows, and he was looking into the kitchen, and he thought, one day I will be there, and he is there. And he's one of the chefs working also at the social cooking school.
Right, right.
And when you see him in his house, he still lives in the same area, but his house now is not a house of wood, but he has a house of bricks. And so
That upward mobility is
it's
very
really visible in Lima.
because of the culinary developments there, and I can imagine that not everybody knows about that. Let's go to Addis Ababa, because modernization is a theme that you connected to Addis Ababa. And before we talk about that, I would like to mention to the audience that it's still possible to ask your questions through menti.com. The code will appear in your screen as well. If you take your device, you can log in with the code and ask your questions to the people here or who are joining us through Zoom. Addis Ababa, if you talk about modernization, what's the connection between the two?
It's actually the last chapter in the book, which is called Modernization. And it's also a very general theme that applies to all cities around the world, I think. But what I mean with it is that this chapter is about what gentrification looks like in upcoming cities.
Gentrification is usually a very negative development, is perceived here as a negative development, like the original population are being pushed out by richer people that have more money. Is gentrification internationally seen also a development that's perceived as bad?
I remember someone saying, well, we're happy to have gentrification because that means that there's also a lot of development. But on the other hand, in Addis Ababa, for example, and I think Melaku can elaborate on that very, very well, it has also a big effect on the cultural heart of the city. Because on one hand, here you see the first light rail of sub-Saharan Africa, which is in Addis Ababa. And but as many people are sleeping on the streets below the train station as are riding in the trains. So there is development, but there's also another side of it, and there's a lack of space.
Like you said, it's good and it's bad.
It's complicated.
It is complicated. There's a short clip that you brought with you about Addis Ababa, about the Fendika Cultural Center.
Yeah, and that's Melaku's nightclub.
And that's why you brought it. Let's have a look.
I'm organizing as much I can to welcome, to give the space for creativity. And I start dynamically, like jazz and mix with tradition. I invite from countryside, and also poetry and painting, gallery, and panel discussion of like folklore, or very vibrant, this kind of venue in Fandika. And I'm traveling all over the world with my profession. Still, I'm traditional Ethiopian traditional dancer, but it's modern and lively. And I'm always dancing. In every wedding, and I listen to music, and I mean, always you can find me in the middle. And then, so this is my life. So whatever challenging in my life, I never change my talent. Like this venue in this area called Kazanchis, around 17 venue. Because of development, all that go on now. Only Fandika survive. You can see a lot of workers, all the things they educate here, they eating here, they sleeping here. All the life I control, almost. And also some waiters on some like things, they become professional dancers. They go with me in America, in Europe. I don't accept just to they working here and living here. But when I see them problems, they don't have house. They don't have family here. So I know the pain. I'm a street children before also. And Fandika I start work. So after I start, I ask permission to sleep here. I sleep 7 years under the bar. Imagine these old people, I use it now. I work, employee with me. Maybe when there is no this place, they go to run away by boat and dying in the sea. So it's nice to keep it, young people to support in home. Otherwise become for everybody's problem all over the world, immigrant, immigrant, immigrant. You know, the government, you don't need now this place. They need 8th floor to build. When I don't do what the government proposed me, I can't live here. So to build 8th floor, you can imagine. Now I need 3 million euro to build. Still, that's the idea. Not only for Ethiopia, it's for Africa and for all over, for the world.
That's great to see. Joining us through Zoom are Melaku Bilai, and he's the founder of Fandika Cultural Center in Addis Ababa. A warm welcome to you. And also joining us is Hades Alemayehu, who's a musician from Addis Ababa. A warm welcome to you too as well. How long did you, when was the last time that you talked with Melaku?
That has been 3 years ago or 2 years ago.
So is there anything you would like to ask them? Because
Yes, I'm so curious because this is the last thing I know about Fandika. I know it still exists, and I know I follow you on Facebook, and I see a lot of things happening over there. So I'm very happy that Fandika is still alive, but I'm so curious about. Yeah, give me an update, because is there a high rise coming? What's the situation?
Wow. And I don't know from where to start. Thank you very much. I love the table, the way discussion, and honest and humble is a good lesson. And thank you very much, first of all, and the audience also, and patient. Yeah, is an already when I meet you, all the crew, and
you are here in my heart always, because you understand not about only work. You understand humor. You are humor, really, and we never forget of that. What we have time to exchange, because the setup is all about energy, and you bring us for energy. We waiting you with energy, yeah, to share energy. And Fandika is now when I see the video, it's always amazing energy, and there is good change, but there is also never change. And so I can explain, and why I'm starting fighting to for Fandika, the name of my dance. My dance is my saver life, and the government or the name of development all destroys that area.
Yeah.
And the previous government, not now. And I'm fighting, and I know it's destroyed, and I want to buy, and many friends supporting me. I bought it, and I borrow and stuff. And after we're waiting, the government is changed before destroy the house. But the country is busy because of a local war, and still they
Yeah,
don't.
but Malako, it is correct. Huh? You bought the land. Fendika is
Yeah.
on from the government with the crowdfunding with international friends, and
Yeah.
after that they still told you that you have to destroy Fendika and build a high rise because it's a high rise zone, isn't it?
Still there.
That's
If
still
I
the
don't,
same.
yeah, it's still the same. I don't know if they come tomorrow or not. It is so that the problem. But the Fandika, the only one in the planet, energy and culture, creativity, and difficult to explain. Not kind of when I telling you cultural center. You know, you hear this name is cultural center everywhere. It's not.
Sounds very
If-
boring, and it is
it
so
should be
different.
here. And
Yeah.
if you'll be here to feel it that, and so now the good thing is also before is like the building, nobody has don't care, you know, building is this shitty building like fridge building, and but right now is big garden, big like children playing, an amazing setup now. The country developing. I'm really what my dreaming come true, and I wish you come back again. Big change these 2-3 years, an amazing hope. Except the system of about how much we have the culture, we don't understand how much we have. That setup is not easy, of course. More than 100 years come is by 3 years he can't change. But we have amazing hope because it's the sacred land. We have a lot to give, and I appreciate your comment. The hope of the future of the coming town is not only about a building, the
It's about the
understanding
people, huh?
of
Yeah.
the people. And because I wish people know it about Ethiopia, always anger and war. No,
Yeah,
we have
that's the other idea we were talking about, because
Yes.
now the only thing in the Dutch and international media about Ethiopia is war,
anger and war.
hunger and war, and
And we have a lot to give.
it is quite
We have a lot
refreshing.
to give because we never colonized in the keeping the culture alive. And we are very proud people. The only alphabet in Ethiopia, in Africa, have it. Food, clothes, language, discipline, and you know, is the countryside 75% of farmer, but they pray for human being without border all over the planet.
Hadis, I see you nodding in agreement. Do you agree with what is being said? Is the system so difficult to change that sometimes the people are just not able to do or to chase their dreams or to have their hopes? Do you recognize that, Hadis?
Yes, I agree with Malaku. Of course, the system really matters in humans' life. People might dream. They have a lot of dreams in their life, but of course, the political system, educational system, and many systems around the life really matter. yeah, as we know, in developing countries, there are a lot of things, happening about making people's dream to reality. There are a lot of challenges. And as an artist, as a citizen, and as a young generations, we're trying our best, to fight that system and to build our own track and on the way, to succeed our dream. And yeah, I totally agree with most of Malaku mentioned. And by the way, I would like to say one thing. Malaku is a pioneer and he's a motivator, and he's our hero. So we follow. Starting from my hair, I always follow him,
No,
Stephanie, would you like to ask Hadis a question? What is the question to Hadis?
Yeah, Hadis, when I met you for the first time, you told me about your dream board. You have a dream board, you told me. And for me, that became... there was so much hope in your dream board, which was above your bed. You just moved to another place and you showed us your dream board. And at the time we met, you just had your first concert. And now I know, because we are apping a lot, that you're traveling around the world. You've been in Brussels lately. And so what about your dream board? Where are you on the dream board right now? Do you still have it? Or is it already fulfilled?
It's really amazing. I was sharing to my Mossab band group members last 2 weeks ago. Just I came from Brussels. I had really big concert also in Brussels, this EU and African summit. So I had a big concert and I just came to them and I told them, hey guys, I had a dream like 3 years ago, I showed you all my dream boards and things like that. And most of the dreams that I put it on the picture, that they all are coming to reality. So guys, do you have a dream? Like I'm just asking them and nagging them that they have also to have, the dream board, and, they have to cut from the newspaper and from the magazine and things like that. They have to put them on the dream board. And yeah, most of them are happening. I got married and I'm happy with my life. And in 2050 in Ethiopian calendar, I want to see all the world playing this beautiful Ethiopian traditional instrument. This is masinko. So 2050, that's also my vision. But now, my dreams are becoming real and real and real. And thank you for remembering and mentioning it.
That sounds amazing. There's a question from the audience, and that question is aimed at Rachel. How can we stop high-rise buildings in African cities like Addis Ababa, and should we want to stop it? It's good and it's bad.
It's complicated, no. No. Okay, I don't think we want to stop it. I think density has a lot of advantages. You've been talking about mobility in Medellin, for example, being able to get to different parts of the city for work or childcare or education, etc. That is one of the mechanisms that leads to social upward mobility, right? So I think we can accept and assume that high-rise building will continue. At the same time, I think it has to be done in a better way, right? What we see, particularly in Addis, is that the Sefers, the neighborhoods that are mostly sort of one story, the older neighborhoods in the center of the city, are just being demolished, and then the high-rise condominiums are coming. And I think we need to switch from just development to development without displacement.
So, and does that also mean that what I understood from Malaku is that there needs to be a better appreciation of your own culture in order to promote that, to have pride in that, and to take that into account, even if you're developing urban cities or urban areas. So and it fits in what you say. Take care of what there already is and develop it in a way that it's combined with high rises.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is also that the people doing the planning are in this case Ethiopian, that they understand the needs and the concerns locally. What you see quite often is that international companies come in, and somebody like me is designing in a city I've never even visited, and that's where you run into big problems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And everybody has to have a seat at the table when in regard to urban development. There's another question.
Melako wants to.
Oh, Melako, go right ahead. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm interesting when you said stop building and so it's as my intention is the building when I said before there is no structure in the middle of the road, the building, no leader and stuff. But now good compound, good thing is I don't want anybody one society to use one toilet. I need to progress.
Yeah.
And I don't need to sleep with my child forever. And I just need things. So, but we, as a way to be balanced and discussion to follow the rhythm. So that's why I want to add that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And that has to be taken in account, and everybody needs to have a seat at the table in that sense. Another question from the audience is, how does this translate, like the building high-rises, to Dutch cities like Amsterdam, and how should we stop gentrification here? Should we stop gentrification here? Can we?
Well, I live in Rotterdam, which is different context than Amsterdam, but has some similarities, of course. And I'm actually moving, I'm part of the problem. I'm moving to Feyenoord, which is traditionally a vulnerable neighborhood in Rotterdam, probably the highest crime rates, et cetera. And actually, after reading this book, what I was thinking, because last summer there was a kind of 2 weeks where we had, I think, 4 people murdered through gun violence in the neighborhood that I'm about to move to. And I, as a mother, you're like, oh, well. But then the police came in and put in all these observation towers, and it became this kind of controlled state, which felt worse, actually. And so reading this book, I'm thinking, actually, it's not controlling people, it's giving opportunities, right? It's allowing that culture and that creativity to flourish that's already there.
How do you do that? If you talk about gentrification, it's not about making communities flourish, it's displacing or replacing communities.
Right.
So how does that combine with, gentrification? How can you combine the two?
You can and you should, and I wish I had a really good example for you. I think it's something we're working towards everywhere. I don't know, Stephanie, do you know of a good example of that? Have you seen?
I'm thinking about something I read in a book of Richard Florida, the latest book, and he's saying that poor people, they don't lack talent or skills, they lack opportunities.
Yeah.
So all they need is good infrastructure. And for example, in Kinshasa, they need infrastructure so they can move from the slums to the city center or the parts where the jobs are and where they can study. And I think that will help a lot. That infrastructure, and that's what I saw.
But what Medellin did well was connecting different kinds of communities. What I didn't perceive that happened in Medellin yet was communities being displaced or people being pushed out because other people moved in and there was no room for them anymore. And that's, I think, the definition of the Western or Amsterdam version of gentrification. Should we stop that in order to preserve communities, even when they're vulnerable, like Feyenoord? What should we do with that in your perception?
Yeah, I think mixed neighborhoods work the best.
Yeah.
So you moving to Feyenoord actually brings maybe new opportunities in. But what happens a lot is that there are coming too many people, and actually. The person saying to me that gentrification was a good thing, that it was someone from Medellin that told me, we are happy with gentrification. For many years we dreamt of gentrification, now it's finally here. But it's not the idea that it becomes, that the city is only accessible for the happy few.
Yeah, I understand. Unfortunately, time has run out. What I take away from this conversation is that it's all about balance. Change is good, and innovation is also good, but it's all about balance. And it's also, what I understood from Nako, it's also about who has a seat at the table and who are the system geared to. A system, there are always systems, but if they are not taking into account what people's own cultures are or what people's needs are, then the system is not working for now.
Yeah, it's also about telling different stories.
Yeah.
That's also about balance.
Yeah.
And that's what we tried to do with this project.
Great. Well, and then it's time to, virtually and literally, handing out the first copies of the book. And please, if you would like to share something from the book, that would be great.
Yeah.
You've got a special table there. I don't know whether you want to move there already, because that's what we installed with your own microphone and everything.
I will do that.
Would you like to take this one?
The thing is, I already handed the first copies. It is 2 weeks ago to the family of Yvonne.
Are we too late now?
There was
no, that was a very joyous occasion. A very special occasion.
There was a special occasion, and I really enjoyed that moment.
Yes. Yeah.
And shall I move there?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Like I said, a very special moment here. I'm very happy that the family of Yvonne, of course, got the real first copy of the book. But now we've got the official moment where we send the book into the world. And the word is to Stephanie. The floor is yours.
Yeah. As we speak, a lot of books are traveling around the world to Miami, to Addis Ababa, to Kinshasa, to Lima, to Canada. And from Canada, they are moving to Yangon. Actually, none of them has arrived yet. And they are on their way already for 3 weeks. So I hope you get your books very soon. But that was the idea, to hand the first copies of the books to the family of Yvonne, and after that to you as the protagonists of this project, because I'm incredibly grateful to all the protagonists of the future cities for sharing their lives and their dreams and their challenges with us, and we spent so many good moments together, it will be impossible to thank everybody who has contributed to this project over the years. But I like to make a special mention to some people who helped to realize this book. It was a pleasure to work with Eleonore Japsam, the publisher from the book. She's always calm, with a sharp eye and a creative mind. She was the one who came up with the idea to mix all the cities, and I'm enormously grateful to Arthur Herman and Jeroen Kummer and Robin Sluis for your dedication, your patience, and your support, because much more went into the making of this book than a great design alone. We also spent some emotional moments together. And last but not least, I don't know if he's here, but a big thanks to Egbert Fransen from Pakhuis de Zwijger. He has been one of the first believers in this project and created great opportunities for us to bring the stories further. Thanks to all of you for supporting me in the time in the previous time. And now I want to conclude. There's a whole page of acknowledgements in the book, so for a complete picture, read that. And I want to conclude by reading a part of the final part of the book. When you think of the strength of the city, you might think of buildings, the economy of the geographical location. Our journeys of discovery often led us to the creative and the cultural heart of the city. This wasn't always immediately obvious. Sometimes we had to search for it, behind the crumbling facades of colonial buildings, in hard-to-find home studios, or in a garage between the concrete skeletons of new high-rises. But once we found what a city excelled in, we suddenly saw it everywhere. We found out that culture isn't a luxury, but a necessity, essential in creating a city that is sustainable, authentic, and inclusive. Whether it's music, cuisine, or fashion, culture brings people together. It decreases differences and increases understanding. It connects people to one another and to the city and gives them a reason to participate. And it produces role models. The residents of Lima have more faith in a chef than in a politician. A chef who managed to do what no politician or guerrilla leader could, unite people. The governments of these cities we investigated, however, choose to back projects that at first sight look economically more attractive to cultural initiatives. A 9-story block of flats or a luxury hotel will generate more income than a historical coffee house where legendary jam sessions take place. And this may be true in the short term, but in the long term it means the city loses its soul. Future cities taught me to look differently, at small-scale developments that could grow into something big, at ordinary people with an ordinary story, and at the role of photojournalism. Journalists tend to paint a bleak picture of reality. They report on injustice, on events that deviate from the norm, and of course that's our job. But by focusing exclusively on the negative aspects, they are only describing half of the truth, even less. In fact, in many ways, the world is doing well. The number of people living in poverty has been declining for 25 years. The middle classes are growing by the day, and the great majority of children go to school. The speed of these development is greatest in the cities, which have always been the places where everything happens first and faster. True, we were confronted by the clichés of urbanization during our travels. We saw garbage everywhere, we got stuck in stinking traffic jam for hours, and we walked through the slums, fuming at the inequality in the world. But we also discovered that there's another story to tell, stories of hope, of new opportunities, of people working hard to get ahead and succeeding. Even though the negative stories are true as well, we choose to emphasize these stories. Journalism holds up a mirror to the world, but it's the journalist who decides who look in it. There's a different reality than the one we think we know, and it's time to look it in the eye. It's the only way to improve the living conditions of all those millions of city dwellers. Things are going better than we think, but the world is not good, finished, or without problems. There's a huge amount of things that can be improved and must be improved. But that's easier if you know what solutions work and if you understand what motivates and connects people. So that's the final part of the book, and I invite you to pick up your copy for the people that already bought the book to the crowdfunding, and I'm happy to hear what you think of it.
Bravo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's amazing what you wrote, and the book looks amazing as well. I'm going to dive into it now. I have my own copy, and of course, this is a very big homage as well to Yvonne Brandwijk, who unfortunately couldn't be here. But I'm very happy to hear that a family received the first copy. So thank you so much. Well,
thank you.
We're done.
Much.
Yes. Malaka thanks us as well. And thank you. We've come to the end of our program, and I would like to thank you all for joining me here at the table, and for our guests who are joining us through Zoom. And thank you for sharing your stories. And thank you for visiting us here in the Pakhuizen as well. In a moment, there will be a signing session here in the meeting rooms that's just outside of this room. So you can pick up your copies and have your copies signed there as well. And crowdfunders who bought the book as well, who supported the book beforehand, can pick up their copies as well. So happy to have you here as well. And make sure that you will check our website if you're interested in other programs from Pakhuis de Zwijger. That's zwijger.nl. And next week we will have the Week Against Racism here at Pakhuis de Zwijger. There will be a huge array of different kinds of program that draws attention to racism and how to fight that. Very interesting. It's also possible to become a member and support Pakhuis de Zwijger. If you go to deswijger.nl, you can sign in there. Well, that's the end of this program, at least. I hope to see you next time in the next program. Thanks again for joining us, and see you soon. Bye-bye.